Good afternoon, you lovely people. How are you doing? Thank you so much for a wonderful show yesterday. Really enjoyed that. I always think when I'm on solo and you guys interact with me, makes my day, makes it all worthwhile, and certainly keeps the conversation moving in a positive direction. I've had some lovely feedback from that, not just live, but also after the fact. It seemed to really engage people about the adverts that they might have seen or not seen with regards to massage guns and what their place is and stuff. And it obviously opens more of a discussion around styles of practice, etc., more than it does the actual devices. And so that's exactly what this show's all about. So that's brilliant. And similarly, to channel and further that conversation, I've got an esteemed guest joining me soon. She's just waiting in the lobby, hopefully not making a mess. I'm just keeping an eye there. She seems to be all good and smiling. And you're all going to be really, no doubt tuning in to listen to her. As you might have seen, those eagle eyes on the title sequence, I'm being joined today by Leanne Antoine, good friend of mine. We're getting to know each other increasingly over recent months, but also known of her and her work for longer than that. And so I'm really pleased to have her on the show. And we've got a few things that we're going to be announcing that I won't do as a spoiler yet. Please do, as ever, tune in on the chat function for those that are tuning in live. Please let us know your thoughts and comments. We would love for conversation to flow, and you'll get to know quite quickly. If you've not aware of Leanne, we love to chat both between us, but also we'd love to get you guys engaged as well. As ever, when there's a guest on, you guys sometimes are a little bit coy until the end, and then I don't have enough time to sort out the comments and questions. I don't want that to happen, especially today. Me and Leanne would love to have you guys involved and speaking up. So please do let me know and get into the chat box. So without further ado, I shall shut up and introduce Leanne. Leanne, can you hear me?
I can.
Fantastic. That's brilliant. Well, thank you for joining me today. For those that haven't seen or heard of your work before, just maybe give us a quick intro into you, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. God, the ability to introduce myself. I'm like, where do I start? So, my name's Leanne Antoine. I am a chartered physiotherapist based in St Albans and Radlett. I work privately. My company is called Distinct Physiotherapy. Generally, people look and see purple and they think of me because that's my brand colour, although I'm not in purple today. But you can see the sign behind me. I've been in clinical practice now for nearly 15 years. And my business has been going for just over 5 years, with an MSK flow to it. But I have spent a lot of time, I suppose, building the brand of my business, which comes with a bit of awareness around physiotherapy. So I do a lot more in the space of educational marketing in the way that I generate business, but also educate the general public. I'm a media spokesperson for the Charter Society of Physiotherapy. I also do a lot of stuff in terms of speaking at schools to encourage students to become physiotherapists. And I do a lot of like motivational, educational talks and presentations. So I was going to say in a nutshell, that's me. I usually say to people, by day I'm a physiotherapist and by night I'm a voiceover artist.
Yeah, I've heard about a bit about that, and that's definitely something. If you hadn't have said it, I would have brought up that you also moonlight as a voiceover artist. I'm sure that people are listening now can understand why. It's such an interesting and unique voice that you have, and also something that it's almost so really, because you're so well practiced and well versed with regards to the public speaking side, it means that things just flow so nicely. And also some great work you've been doing as a media spokesperson, and I know that's something we're going to come to talk about in a little while. I know we're at risk of starting with the punchline in a way, but those that have had an eagle eye on the descriptions will notice that we are also announcing today that you're going to be running for CSP Council. So that's the Chartered Society of Physiotherapy as a membership council, which technically runs the organisation, at least signs off on what the staff base would be wanting to do and put into the agenda. And so we've also, we'll talk a little bit about later on as to how we're going to try and make sure that your voice is out there and known way ahead of those elections. But start off there by saying, how did you come to that decision, and why is it that you're wanting to get stuck in that way?
I think that there are lots of reasons as to why, and why now. And when I think about what my own, what's been my own awareness of the CSP, what have I thought about the work that they do or don't do? Have I felt like I've been represented? Do I feel like I've been heard? Is it supportive to private practice? Do I actually know what they do? Like, what does it mean to be a member in such a, in a governing body that has so many members, 62,000 members. And whilst I think that, definitely, I'm going to say matters around equality, diversion and inclusion have definitely, I want to say accelerated the potential for me to be a part of this, because I think that there's been a long period of time where positions like this haven't felt accessible. How can I get there? How do I do that? What does that mean? So I think I've kind of arrived at a point in my profession, 15 years as a physio, 20 years in healthcare as a physio assistant before I started, before I went, became qualified. And where I feel like I'm at a point where those things fundamentally at that point really matter moving forward. And what do the next potential 20 years in physiotherapy look like? I want to be a part of that. I think that is fundamentally so important. And as a clinician and as someone, my origin into physiotherapy was through my grandmother, who was an orthopedic nurse for nearly 40 years. Right. I think that there's a personal feeling about what I feel for physiotherapy. I know some people will say, well, for some people it's just a job, right? Sure. For me, I feel like very much about what I do is very much a calling. I don't feel like it's just a job. Right. So I've become quite embedded in my practice, embedded in my brand, embedded in the profession. And I think that a lot of people find me relatable because of that. Sure. They can feel what I'm saying. It resonates with them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because it's something that there's a lot of physios and a lot of people in the MSK space as therapists that definitely just feel like it's such a central part of their personal identity. It's not just a job, it's certainly a vocation. It's certainly something that then becomes integrated as a passion. And I think that's one of the things is that it's not just even because sometimes I see that more in therapists than I do even in people more broadly in healthcare, in part because I think the act of scaling people's functional ability, the act of not just helping them, but also helping them to help themselves, becomes something that seems central to other parts of people's character and other parts of their lives. So I think that's definitely a good point. And thank you for throwing your hat into that ring. I think it's certainly long overdue to have people like yourself on and around the council, and also for people to make sure that we diversify the styles of all sorts of different types of voices, but also to try to make sure that this is something that you are known for calling a spade. You're also someone that is known for making sure that you articulate yourself thoroughly, and to make sure that things aren't just done superficially. And I think that's one of the things that most excites me, admittedly, and obviously in public and private conversations that me and you have had, that seems to be where we have a lot of kinship, is that we just sort of we can sort of have we smell when someone's saying something for effect, and we can tell when someone actually wants to instigate meaningful change. And one of the things that stifles meaningful change is superficial, tokenistic gestures, making lots of noise, talking the talk, not walking the walk. We both don't like that. So how do you feel like you will be wanting to drive those sorts of changes, and what sort of sense of accountability are you going to hold both yourself and others around you to?
I think that sorry, say that again, because somebody just popped in with something, and
oh, it's okay, no bother. Yeah, I was just mean, what sort of when you think about what you're hoping for let's hope you get elected to council, what you're going to hold, what standards you're going to hold yourself to and others to, that are going to then help to drive standards up?
I think as you've said, the element of kind of digging in a little bit deeper is key, but then not just digging in deeper just for me to understand, but also for other people like me to understand, other members like me to understand. So, I think that there are people who are raising a lot of the same questions in terms of what the CSP does. Okay, if we're feeling that isn't clear, despite the fact that we think we've got information on the website and that should be accessible and is actively being updated, because there's a lot of work, obviously, that's going on, behind the scenes to keep us updated as members. But actually going in deeper to things that we think maybe we don't understand, and unpeeling back what some of that truly is. You know, how do we grow and grow within the space that is current, so that as a profession we don't feel like we're at risk of being left behind in any way. Sure. You know, particularly for our upcoming students who, you know, at this moment in time will be struggling with placements, with potentially getting jobs, feeling like, are they getting enough hands-on contact? And I think it's exploring some of what that looks like from that point moving forwards, and people knowing exactly where they can go to get assistance or help, and what that help looks like. Because I think that there's been a lot of push, you know, particularly through the pandemic, that's, well, what does the CSP do then? How can they help us? For me, the accountability is around being able to answer some of those questions succinctly. And if there is something that's missed, not been accounted for, needs to be evaluated, can be stretched and made bigger or smaller to manage, that we can do that together. If I am somebody who helps to platform that, and then we're utilizing, a bit like with the EDI survey now, saying that they're going to need, you know, the CSPs needs a little bit of extra time to take into account the networks. It's about having those conversations with people so that people actively feel like they are involved in something that they have created.
And so what we've touched on there is then your ability to then make sure that there's the conversations not just raised, but also the actions are then taken, and that then we make sure that there's not just talk, but walk as well. One of the things that was just popped up here, I noticed Bernadette Johnson has asked, do you not think that Physio First already represents private physio? What is lacking that standing for the CSP would add? I just wonder, obviously I've got my answer to that. What's
your... Yeah, no. So actually what some conversation was around in relation to the CSP was, and I know this has probably come up quite a lot in terms of, and I'm not saying that Physio First is not representing private practice at all. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that a lot of people, I think, and this has come up, is that CSP is supporting you as a member of the Chartered Society of Physiotherapy. But we know that we have a lot of private clinicians who work independently in the private sector. So when they're going for help via the CSP, it's as though they're expecting that help to come as per their business.
Yeah.
But actually that help is for them as a member, as an independent clinician, not from the business practice as a whole. Does that make sense?
And that's the thing, as an independent practitioner, you're never going to be really uncoupling those two things. You never really consider yourself as a clinician independent of your business, because it's something that's so intertwined. And that's one of the things, admittedly, Alex McKenzie on a recent Physio Matters podcast did realize that they hadn't been exposed to before, that has been a learning experience for them. Just a part of the answer there, because Bernadette, thanks for your comment there. But I know Bernadette is a patient and an MSKR member suffering with persistent pain. And so just to clarify, Bernadette, that Physio First is a separate organization in many ways. And so you've got many CSP members that pay fees to the CSP, that then the Physio First is a separate set of fees and a separate organization. And whilst they are a body that represents private physio, the CSP have a duty to its members independent of Physio First. There's no obligation to be a member of either, but you certainly have many more people as members of the CSP that aren't Physio First members, and so there is a difference there that's relevant. I suppose that standing for CSP Council has a direct influence on a profession-wide agenda, which I imagine, Leanne, knowing you, that's something that matters deeply to you as well. It's not just a private practice voice that you're trying to bring here. You're wanting to raise standards across healthcare.
Yeah, and I think, you know, when I originally, I say, started out as a physio back in the day.
Back in black and white times, dare I say.
Feels like that. It does feel a little bit like that at times. But, you know, I didn't really even know what physiotherapists did, you know, to think that we now have, you know, a platform like this, Chewing It Over, where you're telling me that one of your patients is now commenting about, you know, Physio First, you know, and pitching him with an absolutely credible question.
Well, by the way, not one of my patients, by the way.
But she's a patient.
I haven't met yet.
Sorry, she's a patient.
A patient advocate. Yeah.
But we know that, you know, 20 odd years ago, those kind of conversations were not
Yeah, it's a
happening.
great point.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
And now, as we're moving forward, and we know that we can kind of give things so much more visibility, and that, our patients can hold us to so much more account because of their knowledge about what we do and how we do it.
Yeah.
And also because patients are constantly questioning, right, what's the difference between you and this profession? What's the difference between you and that profession? And I will never tell anyone that it's like we have a point to prove. But I know you and I have spoken before, and we've had people comment about, raising the esteem, this, the sort of self-esteem of physiotherapy. And I think this space that we currently find ourselves in, through the pandemic, this has been a really good time for us to raise the energy, the visibility, the publicity of what it is that we do and how well we do it. Like, it pleases me no end to see retweets on Twitter for cardiorespiratory physiotherapists being involved in the ITU level, for the BBC articles to be retweeted like constantly by people. I am like, it delights me to be a part of that, as what I think is actually a fundamental movement for physiotherapy. Whether people want to acknowledge it like that or not is I'm going to say, is almost irrelevant, because I know that respiratory physiotherapists have been in ITU for ages. I was a band 5 and a band 6 on rotation. I worked on ITU. I was on call. So for us to be doing what we have been doing all this time, and for now to be able to consolidate that and say to the public, to each other, here we are. And I always put the comment, I see you. That I see you is like, I see your efforts. I see you putting in the work. That is, thank you. That is my gratitude. Like, it comes with so much behind it, because I know, like me, there are so many other clinicians who have been putting in that work, the graft, and it's not been easy. And now when we get to this point, when you think, okay, finally, we have some change, this is just the beginning. This is just the start.
You have some great unique insights into that visibility piece, especially with the work you've done in schools. When you do speak to school children and stuff, and you maybe ask them the question, do you know what physios do, or what's your understanding of it? How accurate do you feel their perception is of what we do compared to what the reality is?
Still very inaccurate. It's been interesting. So when I started Distinct 5 years ago, at the beginning, I had no real help. There wasn't anyone around to give me a hand or anything. And I would go to some schools that would just ask me to be present at what was just career fairs,
Right.
And I would say to my mum, I'd be stacking up the car, and she said, well, shall I come? Shall I help you? And there was no way that I was going to be able to do all of this on my own. There were other companies there who would have, the employees of that company represented. And there's me traipsing in with my plastic box of equipment and my roller banner and attempting to look as professional as these other companies. And the more I've done, the more I was present at these events and bringing my mum, I realized that to some degree, my mum was even asking certain questions, around what I did and how I did it. Somebody's asked her this and she's been able to answer this, but then I could hear in the background going, and you'll have to ask Leanne about that, because there were just things that she just fundamentally didn't know. And what we realized, I remember doing 4 of those now, obviously because of lighting, sorry. Because of the pandemic, that those types of events are not being hosted in quite the same way. But I remember being at one and having this queue that was just so long. Whatever I was saying seemed like it was like wildfire around the hall. And I had this queue of people. So it was parents and the students wanting to speak to me. Now, fortunately, I'd done a frequently asked questions pamphlet, and I'd also asked the CSP for some information for students who would want to get into the profession. So we had created these packs of information and we were able to hand those out. But it still meant that students had questions. And fundamentally, to me, they had the questions because they realized that there were things that they didn't know about the profession. There were things that their parents didn't know about it. And hold on a minute, maybe this is something that my child can do that I hadn't even thought of. To me, for the amount of visibility that there is of us, particularly in hospitals, more people should know exactly what we do, what it looks like.
Yeah, and I think that that definitely needs to be the breakthrough that we use. And I think the sort of multimedia, new media, also the way that that overlaps now with the sort of legacy media, as you're saying, with you being a representative, as I am sometimes in that mainstream publications. I think that that's only going to raise standards. But also, we just need to just not be shy to try and bust some of the stereotypes of the bucket and sponge man, the massage therapist in a narrow sense. And it's just something that helping people to realize the incredible breadth of things that get done. I mean, I always say in my household, because my wife Charlotte is a pediatric respiratory physio. And so I always say she's working with poorly children. I'm working with otherwise fairly well adults relative to them. And it's like the breadth of us having the same degree sometimes surprises people when they hear about the differences in our job role. And I think that that understanding of it is only going to be better for physiotherapy if the accuracy is there as standard and more people are aspiring to be physios. Now, I hope this doesn't seem like I'm definitely looking at the time. I know it would be remiss if I didn't get stuck into another passion of yours, which of course have been a higher social item on the agenda worldwide, of course, with regards to black representation. And so our corner of that in healthcare and in physiotherapy, etc., I know is a big passion of yours. Could you just reflect on that a little and tell us how that is something that is informing some of the work that you're doing?
Yeah. And I chuckle about it because I don't know when people are doing what they do for their work every day, or when you think about what your purpose is, when I talk about this as an issue, like in my mind it's just huge. It's as part of my purpose, and it's not then just for me as a physiotherapist, it's about who I am. This as a topic, is about me as an individual. That's personal, and that then no longer, there is no then separating, in my mind, Leanne Antoine as a physio, Leanne Antoine as your friend, Leanne Antoine as your clinical educator. I'm back, and for me, and I know you and I have had so many conversations offline, and I know we won't have enough time to go over all of this, but fundamentally, it is important for Black people to see other Black people in management positions. And I know we've spoken about, the pros and the cons, or is there a need for role models, and what does that really look like? What does that really mean to people? Sure. There's also a need for other cultures and races to see Black people in positions of management, Yeah. And for me, it's very much about making this normal. I've heard people use terms like, I want to help Black people to get ahead, and or let's see what we can do to help. No, I'm going to tell you right now, and I say this all the time, and I will repeat it. I don't speak for every Black person, okay? I speak as a Black person, but I don't speak for every Black person, because not every Black person is going to feel the way I do about things. But, and I even say this for minorities, no one is asking for a foot up. What people are fundamentally asking for is, I think, equality and equity in that space. Now, to start with, it may mean that, a person of a certain color has to create certain pathways to make that possible. But fundamentally, those pathways should have already been there. The fact that we have to visit some of this topic in the way that we do at this time is because those things have not been there. So we're having to admit that there's been some shortcomings, and in order to provide solutions to some of those problems, this is what it looks like.
Yeah.
But they are solutions to problems. They are not foot ups. You're not helping anybody to come forward.
Yeah, people, well, I mean, obviously, me and you are sort of smirking at each other a little bit, because this is the sort of chat that we have offline, whereby it's something that feels, it's sometimes well intentioned, but people end up being incredibly patronising, and let's be frank. Sometimes there's a more than just a tinge of racism there to think that people might need your hand. It's like a saviour complex that sometimes emerges, sometimes from well-meaning people, but actually in a condescending fashion. So your example that you're setting and continue to, not just here, of course, but all the other work that you're doing, is something that definitely is something that's there to inspire, but it's also one that you always wanted to make clear that this is something that instead about trying to get better visibility based on what you were saying before and why I linked it. We're never going to cover enough in 5 minutes, of course, but over time, no doubt, and we'll announce in a second how we're going to do that, but you're going to be able to get your message out loud and proud. I think that the ability to recognise the statistical differences compared to the general population in representation of black people in physiotherapy, as well as in healthcare, etc., in different formats, means that when you're having those conversations at schools, etc., is that recognition of that being a role of which someone might aspire to is completely linked to those, not just statistical differences, but also people recognizing themselves in particular roles, aspiring to them, and recognizing that also there's a few different ways in which their careers could go, and this is one of them that they might not have otherwise considered. And so that's that area that you're obviously blazing trails on, but also where that it's being clear that that's not you then saying let's help people up and make way. It's instead just recognizing that no, let's try and adjust some of the systemic barriers that might have occurred, move them out of the way, and no one need any help. It's just just making sure that there's an appropriate route through. Which is really interesting. Now, I said about announcements, etc. You're going to be hosting Chewing It Over once a month. You're going to be doing a takeover on a Tuesday.
Come on!
So people that listened in on Monday, they had Reese and Amelia. On Tuesday, Jack March, and they're all announcing that each once a month they're going to be doing a takeover, and so you'll all be delighted, no doubt, to hear less of me. So Leanne's going to be joining you and talking about some of these issues in more detail, as well as no doubt getting all sorts of interesting guests on to touch on the things that she's passionate about, as well as helping you guys to realise what Leanne and others like her could do to influence the likes of the CSP by climbing onto council when that time comes in the summertime. So what have people got in store for when you do your takeover shows, Leanne?
I think expect me to bring some energy, like 100%, and to have some real raw, honest, open conversations. Like, even when the CSP took me to shadow, I shadowed with them. There's a real honest, I'm a very honest and open, authentic character. I don't have to try to be that person. That's who I am. So when I'm here chatting with you, or we'll be chatting with other, I'm going to say members of the CSP or other guests, I expect to bring exactly the same thing. And I hope that the audience will feel like they can come with their questions very openly. It's going to be an opportunity for me to be quite vulnerable in a space, but hopefully the audience feels the same and they can do the same as well.
Absolutely, yeah, and I'm so looking forward to that. As I've mentioned, and the reason why we're making sure that space doesn't just get vacated and left empty is because I'm looking forward to being on my way to nursery to scoop the kids up, tuning into the various guest hosts, and so I'm so excited for that. We'll be announcing exactly when that will be shortly on social media, so pay attention to that. But certainly one Tuesday each month, and that's as the guest host. But of course, there's always plenty of opportunities for me and Leanne to chew it over, and no doubt she can be a frequent guest on this show, independent of her guest hosting. There's already some excited comments coming in. We're not going to be able to read all of them because it's only a minute to go, but Joe Turner said that'll be fantastic. Looking forward to that. Comments also coming in agreeing that this is the time to address issues of esteem, identity, professional credibility. COVID has turned the lights on. No going back. Thank goodness. It's a lovely comment. So what I just want to make sure I say as well before we go is that as Leanne is doing and throwing her hat into the ring, we are also, a newsletter is going out tomorrow to MSKR members, which I know is a slightly different thing, but MSKR members that happen to be physiotherapists and happen to be CSP members. MSKR are looking at ways in which we can support anyone that is fancying running for CSP Council to make sure that you get the exposure that you deserve, as well as the opportunities to try and help with various different things that many of the associate directors, especially, as well as myself and Felicity, have had insight into that can help you to understand what the role will entail, as well as support you and how you feel if you're an MSKR member supportive of the MSKR agenda, how we can sort of link those things up appropriately so that the MSKR can then field candidates essentially, or support candidates that might want to run. And Leanne's a brilliant example of that, who's someone that recognizes that it's not about one narrow thing. It's about trying to recognize the raising of standards across the board and advocating as she does. So just point people in the right direction for your social media handles, Leanne, and then we'll wrap up from there.
Yeah, sure. So on Instagram, I am at Distinct Physio. Facebook, Distinct Physiotherapy. LinkedIn, it's actually my name, Leanne Antoine, but you can also find the company Distinct Physiotherapy as well. I'm on Clubhouse. Hit me up on Clubhouse if you're on Clubhouse. I love a good discussion, hearty, meaty, deep. And what am I missing, Jack? Twitter, Distinct Physio, because some people said to me, oh, they didn't realize that was me. It's definitely me. I'm as distinct as it gets.
Yeah, I need to talk to you about that. I think we need to make sure your name is attached to it.
I'm gonna have to,
yeah. Some stuff there, aren't we? But Clubhouse, I've just got my my special invite. Someone sent me over. Thank you, Rob Bevan, for inviting me to Clubhouse. But I still need to do my little first show. So maybe me and you can do something on Clubhouse for those
100%.
that haven't been on there yet. That'd be cool. So
all over that.
Thanks so much. I notice we are out of time, unfortunately. But thanks as ever, Leanne. Really appreciate it. I'm really looking forward to what you bring to tune it over. Don't do too good a job, because otherwise I'm going to be out of a job. Warm into it or something. Like, make sure there's some space left for me. Otherwise, I'm going to have I'm going to be egg on my face. But thanks as ever. And for those that are tuning in, I think tomorrow. Let me look. What forgot? Have I got a guest on tomorrow? I can't remember. Oh, that's what I wanted to tell you. Monday, unless he's going to tell me otherwise tonight, because he's not managed to edit it in time. But Tom Jessen we're doing a book launch. He's going to launch his sciatica book on air on Monday, so please tune into that. It's going to be absolutely brilliant. So we're going to get stuck into sciatica with Tom Jessen then. Amazing what he's done with this book. It's going to be absolutely brilliant. So please, that's Monday. I can't remember what we're doing tomorrow, but it's going to be brilliant too. So tune in then. Okay, ta-ra. Bye.